Hi, everyone. Welcome to the President's Live Briefing. We have about 185 people registered to join us today. I want to remind you that we will take questions in the Q&A section in the little chat button. Please don't raise your hands because I won't be able to call on you. And with that, I will turn it over to President Lemons.
Thank you, Yoshanda, and good afternoon to each of you. Thank you for joining us today for this President's Live Briefing. Joining me today are Provost Nwosu and Vice President for Administration and Finance, Rene Rotolo, and happy to have them as they frequently are on this briefing. We're in extraordinary times, and usually when I say that, I'm referring to the COVID-19 pandemic and the financial crisis it has caused, and those, of course, are still with us, undeniably, and remain very firmly part of our reality. But at the same time, we have other things that are extraordinary, and some of those things happen to be good things. But one of the things that I wanted to, actually a couple things I want to mention that I think we can be very happy about. One is that we've been granted this week an extension for our MS-FNP accreditation in the next year, and that allows the next group of graduates to finish their degrees with an accredited program and to sit for the national exam, and possibly the next cohort or some as well. So that was really great news that our request for that was granted, and it gets us a long ways towards what we've been trying to do, is to make the situation work well for all the students that are in the nursing program, and we continue to work at that. And so this is a big step forward in that. Also, the first person that was recognized nationally as being vaccinated by coronavirus is a Lehman alumnus, Sandra Lindsay. And she's a critical care nurse at Long Island Jewish. And I think one of the reports, it's great to have one of our alums in that position. But it's also great that she said what she did. I'm going to pause just a moment and see if we can improve the audio here a little bit. See if that helps. So what she said when she said a number of really great things when she was vaccinated, but I pulled this quote out from her. She said, "There's a light at the end of the tunnel, but we still need to continue to wear our masks to social distance. I believe in science. As a nurse, my practice is guided by science, so I trust that." We're hopefully emerging from a pretty dark time, not only a pandemic, but also a war on science and facts from some quarters. And her statement, I think, rings really powerfully. And it makes me very proud. I think it should make us all very proud that it is a Lehman alumna who's made that statement. I think that is really consistent with the values that we hold as an academic institution and as an institution that is squarely on the side of social justice. Other good news that we have, the amphitheater, which has been under construction for probably almost a year now, is virtually completed. It looks beautiful. When we are all able to gather back on campus, we're going to enjoy that space tremendously. And then, of course, it was announced that along with 384 institutions, Lehman College is receiving a large grant from MacKenzie Scott. The combined total of the gifts that were announced this week is a little over $4 billion. We're tremendously surprised, and happily so, that we're part of that. When I was informed about this transformational gift about a week and a half ago, I really wasn't sure if I could really believe my ears. It's not very often that you get a call and someone very calmly tells you that they would like to give $30 million to your college. As she announced the gifts on Tuesday, she described using a data-driven approach to identify organizations with strong leadership teams and results, with special attention to those operating in communities facing high projected food insecurity, high measures of racial inequity, high local poverty rates, and low access to philanthropic capital. She went on to describe kind of work done by the recipient organizations, including education for historically marginalized and underserved people, an apt descriptor of Lehman College. For many of the organizations that are receiving gifts from her provide basic needs, and they're particularly stretched in this moment of the pandemic. And those include many food banks. If you looked at that list, you saw that. A number of Goodwill locations, Meals on Wheels, Easter Seals, and others. There were also a number of colleges, most of them like Lehman, effectively serving the historically marginalized and underserved. To give you an idea of scale of $30 million, and I think this is important because that isn't by any measure a very large amount of money. To put it into a kind of a scale, Lehman currently has an endowment of $6 million. This gift is 5 times that. City College has an endowment of over $300 million, and Harvard has an endowment of $40 billion, or 10 times the total of what Ms. Scott just gave. So, is this a lot of money, and what is it for? Well, yes, absolutely. By any measure, $30 million is a lot, and it's empowering for Lehman. It's like receiving the MacArthur Award. I really look at it like that. I think we should all look at it that way. We're selected not just because we are addressing very pressing needs, and not just because we're in the Bronx, but because we're actually succeeding in a way that's really noteworthy. We were selected for what we do and how well we do it. Now our challenge is really to make this gift one that keeps on giving. And I'll say a little more about that in a minute, what that really means. In receiving this gift, I was told very clearly that we would not receive another gift from MacKenzie Scott, and that we could not apply for another one. I was also told that Ms. Scott believes in us, in our college, and she selected us thinking that we know best about what to do with our resources. So what will we do with these funds and when they arrive? And they probably will arrive in January when the CUNY Board of Trustees formally accepts them, as they must do. Although Lehman College is not an organization whose mission is to fill basic community needs, we are committed to helping our students addressing food insecurity and other emergency needs. And we've been doing that to the best of our ability. We've done that because we've received generous support from Robin Hood and the Keep Your Foundation, the Campaign for Lehman, Giving Tuesday, and many of you have been a part of that. Some of these new funds that we're now receiving will also be used to fill those needs, particularly in the coming months. Of course, we have many needs at Lehman College, but it's important to note what these funds are not intended for. They are not a way to fix our near-term budget challenges, which are due to what we hope are temporary decreases in state funding. So these are not there's not funds for our operating budget. They're not the answer to every long-standing, even legitimate and mostly legitimate needs at the college, which we know there are many. And very importantly, they're not a replacement for funding for initiatives and projects that can be gotten from other sources in the future. So, what are the categories that these funds will be used for? There are 4 broad categories, and these will be further developed, and the details will come into them as time goes on. Student impact is obviously very important. I already described just meeting basic student needs that we know are so pressing right now: food insecurity and other kind of emergency financial needs that students have. Scholarships, career and workforce development. These are broad. This is all part of direct student impact. Academic excellence is another area. It could be faculty capacity building, our work in pedagogy and curriculum, renovation and renewal. The third category is something that we have always claimed very strongly. We're a catalytic anchor institution in the Bronx. So initiatives that address Lehman and its role in the Bronx that have both impact here at the college, but also more broadly in our community. And then institutional capacity building, things that help us do better what we're already doing, but also help us grow and particularly help us raise more funding. So this grant that we've received should be a cornerstone for much larger fundraising effort. And I really believe that it will. And I've had a number of conversations in the past few days about our supporters, whether elected officials or individuals and foundations that have given us money and supported us in the past, and a number of others. And the tenor of these conversations has really changed, because this gift is a real endorsement, and it says to all of those, this is a place where you really want to consider giving more and supporting more, because they get results. So it is going to have that impact if we use it carefully. It can provide needed assistance for initiatives that ultimately will find their own much larger sources of funding, enabling these beginning efforts to really take root and succeed. It will create momentum for the college. One of the questions that I've been asked, and I can't give a complete answer to this question, is, well, where will these monies go? These funds will largely be put into endowment. Although there are, as I've mentioned, there are going to be significant funds that will be spent immediately for immediate needs, and also in more short-term kinds of areas where you know that those funds will do something that will then stimulate much more activity, more fundraising, and more support. We're also going to, in terms of process and how we're going to do that, we will be enlisting some outside help from some individuals who have a lot of experience doing this, help us design a major fundraising campaign that's built on this. And we will be taking our time to do this in a careful way. So in concluding, sort of telling you about this gift and where we are right now, think about this as a gift that is for students of Lehman today. And it's also a gift for the students that will be at Lehman a generation from now. We really want to look at it that way as the beginning of a much larger investment that will pay off not only for students now, but for students well into the future. And I also think, this is to go back to the question of, well, how big a gift is this really? What is the scale of this? Think about this, maybe not so much as a $30 million gift, but think about it as a gift that's going to produce over $1 million a year for the college to use. And then as we build on that, $2 million, $3 million, $4 million, $5 million a year, but year after year after year of support for students, for scholarships, for initiatives, for faculty initiatives, and so on. That's how we have to think about this. Think that if we do that, we're going to steward this gift in a way that answers very pressing needs we have now, but will really build a future for Lehman College that is greater than we might have envisioned a week ago. So that ends what I have to present to you today. And we'll have questions, I'm sure more questions about what I presented. But first I want to turn to Vice President Rotolo and then Provost Nwosu for any updates that they would like to give us.
Thank you, President Lemons. Good afternoon, everyone. It's great to be back with you. I only have really one update and then just one message I want to pass along. An update on our current budget situation is that there isn't an update. And the reason there isn't an update is that we were told at the last Administrative Council that the university would like to wait to see what the governor includes in his executive budget in January. So for now, we're funded through the end of January, and sometime around mid-January, when the governor issues his executive budget, we should get a better idea of what the funding is, although I anticipate that we'll probably continue to operate for the rest of this year at the same funding level that we have up till this point. I want to remind everyone that the campus will be closed to anyone other than essential personnel effective Sunday, December 20th through Sunday, January 3rd, 2021. And then between January 4th and January 15th, we asked that minimal people come on. And I know everyone's been sending in their schedules already. We greatly appreciate it. This is giving us the opportunity to give our essential workers a break. They've been working very, very hard over the past 9 months, and they do deserve a break. And by having less people on campus is how we are able to give them a little much deserved time off. And I would like to take this opportunity to thank all the members of the Lehman community for making this unusual and very trying time easier because of your cooperation and assistance. And on behalf of all of Lehman's essential workers, I thank you and wish you all a wonderful holiday season and a healthy and happy new year. Please stay safe, wear your masks, and stay well. And that's all I have. Back to you, President Lemons. Thank you all.
Thank you, Vice President Rotolo. Provost Nwosu, do you have an update for us?
Yes, Mr. President, good afternoon and good afternoon, everyone. I do want to join you in thanking everyone who has joined us today and certainly re-echo the appreciation from Rene Rotolo, Vice President Rotolo, to the campus community. I have updates on 5 areas. Update on academic continuity and student support. As everyone knows, we are coming to the end of the semester. And one of the issues we've had to deal with as we approach the end of the semester is our grading policy. As you recall, at one of our last Senate meetings before this one that happened yesterday, there was a resolution passed by at the College Senate requesting an extension of the no credit policy that the Board of Trustees had approved for spring semester. Following that resolution, there were a series of conversations that took place between the president, the student government leaders, the Senate leadership, and certainly subsequent meetings that we had in cabinet and with all other stakeholders. And then also meetings with central administration. And then there was then a memo from central administration identifying 3 options for institutions to choose from. We had the opportunity yesterday at Senate meeting to move forward with option 2. As you recall, President Lemons had also sent a memo to the campus community regarding the expectations for that option 2, mindful of the requirements for accreditation for a number of our programs. And that was a discussion that took place yesterday. And I thought it was a very, very good discussion. I want to spend a few minutes and walk folks through the timeline that are important for us to meet the expectations with regard to option 2. Can I have the next slide, please? I have mentioned the Senate meeting that took place yesterday. And then I also want to acknowledge the work that's been going on within our enrollment management team to develop a credit, no credit decision tool. That tool has been finalized. It will be part of the communication that will be going to students. Tomorrow, of course, we have a meeting of our Committee on Admissions, Evaluation and Academic Standards case that will evaluate the list of excluded courses that came from yesterday's meeting. And I'll come back to speak about the number of those courses that we approved for exclusion, and that case will be looking at. Once case reviews those courses, we will secure the president's approval, and we will submit that subsequently to CUNY tomorrow as well. And then we will post those lists of excluded courses on our webpage. It's important for CUNY to get those courses so that they can configure those in CUNY first, and then to permit us the opportunity for the link for the CRNC resolution to go live. So all of this will happen tomorrow. So there's a lot of things that are expected to happen tomorrow. As you all know, end of the fall semester is December 20th. And then just following that end of the fall semester, we don't really have a lot of days left after that. We will be expecting that grades will be submitted on the 23rd of December. It is very, very important, and I want to underscore that without these grades turned in by faculty, it will be very hard for us to actually meet the expectations of the implementation of the credit, no credit policy. So I want to encourage faculty members to be sure that they post those grades by December 23rd deadline. On the 24th of December, it will be the first day for students to begin to opt into the credit, no credit option. That's why it's important for us to have all of the grades in by December 23rd. Keep in mind also that students will have only 20 calendar days from that December 24th through January 12th for them to opt in to that option. So that's the direction that we are going through. And I look forward to everyone cooperating as we move forward with the implementation of this particular resolution that we approved yesterday. Next slide, and I want to point some things out for folks to keep in mind. We are accelerating communication to students through multiple platforms that you see, email, Lehman 360, social media. All of these will commence tomorrow evening. Let me also say that grades of A, A-, and what you see on the screen there will not be eligible for credit, no credit. I've had questions asked of those. And so if you have those grades, there's no need for you to be opting for this particular option. Only students who have grades of B+ and so on, as you have noted here, those are students that may elect the credit, no credit grading option. Again, I want to underscore this point for students, and our advisors will remind them of this. Once you make the decision to opt in and you select a credit, no credit grade, that decision is final. It cannot be reversed and it cannot be appealed. This is very important information. You can change to this and then go back and say, I want to switch to another grade. So it's important that you pay attention to the decision tree that we have. Ask questions of advisors to be sure that what you are selecting is actually what you really want to select. We've identified 80 courses across 3 schools this question was asked yesterday, how many courses from each of our schools? There are 3 from NSS, there are 18 from the School of Education, and there are 65 from HS2N. Those courses that are from education and HS2N are most courses that have implications for accreditation. And when you really look at the number of courses we offered this fall, 3,000 of those, 86 is not really that much. And so, but this is important for us to preserve our accreditation, and we do not get to a point where we harm those programs or we harm the institution in the long run. I also want to underscore this point. that we do not plan to extend this policy beyond fall 2020. This is a policy that we are implementing for this semester and will not be extended beyond this particular semester. Next slide for the second item. As of course we plan to end this semester, we also working on a spring semester. This is always part of the work that enrollment management engages in, and the larger campus community across our schools, admin and finance, academic affairs, all units are involved. There was a campaign last week that we asked everyone to be involved in, a calling campaign. And again, I want to underscore that this work is not done until we get to the beginning of spring semester. So all hands are encouraged to be on the deck. So as we work to shore in our enrollment, the numbers that I have here are numbers that compare to where we were last same semester in spring about the same time. And you can see the difference that we still have some long way to go. And so there's a lot of work for us to be doing. It's actually tied to the discussion that Vice President Rotolo mentioned about budget. And so it's important that we keep at this to maintain the momentum. We are 59% towards the target we have established of 14,747 students in terms of head count. And if you look at the undergraduate student population, that's where a lot of the work, we expect that to be happening. We're making some very, very good headway with regard to the graduate student headcount, and there's a 9% positive difference there. So I want to, again, commend enrollment management, extend appreciation to the larger campus community, our deans and our chairs, and the faculty for the work that it's been done thus far. But that work remains until we get into the spring semester. Next slide, you would see some progress we have made. This is an area of concern for the students have raised. Mental health has been a major concern of ours. And I'm pleased to share with you that we did receive some additional CARES Act funding. And some of that fund we have received will go towards hiring additional counselors, and those counselors that are non-teaching adjunct mental health counselors will be helping with the staffing support we need for our students as we begin spring 2021. So this was very positive news we received this week that the CUNY Vacancy Review Board has approved our request, and I want to thank everyone who made this happen. We also had some discretionary funds of almost $80,000. We have disbursed all of these funds to students who are Title IV eligible, and they will use those funds to cover some of their rent, utility, and medical bills. Again, this speaks to the point that the president made earlier about the support we continue to provide our students. So this is important news. Next slide. The president mentioned nursing accreditation and the good news we received. I want to really underscore the value of that news, that our students will graduate from our master's program in nursing between November 2020 and the new effective date of March 1st will be considered to have graduated from a CCNE accredited program. This is wonderful news. If we go to the next slide, you will see some of the additional steps that we have been taking with our students, regular consultation and communication with students regarding options. I want to commend Dean Harrison and Dr. Alicia Georges, who is chair of the Department of Nursing, and the faculty in that program for all of the work they have done to engage our students. And even as recently as this Monday, there was another meeting with one of the cohorts. Those meetings will continue, and we will continue to be responsive to the students that we're serving and looking at options. We're also looking at another option to ensure that our students, when they take the exam, they actually are successful in those licensure examination. We are in consultation with another credentialing body, the AANPCB, the Association of Nursing Practitioners Certification Board, to explore the possibility of allowing our students to take that credentialing exam. We have made that request and we're waiting to hear from them. And then we also engage in discussions on reviewing our program, and then beginning now to really work towards developing a self-study to ensure that when we finally do submit another application, that we have the accreditation from CCN when that decision is made for the future. They have given us 6 months to reapply, and we've begun to make those preparations, at least at this point. Next slide. This is the last update I have. We had shared with you that the Board of Trustees Committee on Academic Programs and did approve the EDD. That approval went to the full board, and the full board has also given us final approval. We will now submit that request for approval to NICED. And once we secure that final approval from NICED, we will begin preparations to offer this degree program in fall of 2021. In the School of Education as well, again, I want to thank the school and Janet DeSimone in her department, CLESI, for the work they have done in this regard. In the school as well, Interim Associate Dean and the faculty have been working towards the CAPE accreditation, and there's a site visit that is planned for spring of 2021. So all hands on deck to ensure that we're successful with that visit when it happens around April of next year. So Mr. President, that would conclude my update. Again, like VP Rotolo, I want to wish everyone happy holidays and look forward to seeing you in spring of 2021. Be safe.
Thank you, Provost Nwosu.
Thank you.
There are a couple of questions that are in the chat, question Q&A area now that I think maybe we should go right to those that are related to what you've just talked about with credit, no credit, and other grading questions. One is, are these credit, no credit deadlines CUNY-wide or Lehman specific?
They're Lehman specific, but they're guided by CUNY-wide expectations. That's very important to note. And what CUNY is doing, because each institution has their own timelines, and many of the institutions actually selected the option 2, which is essentially what we have done. And they have identified those timelines. Keep in mind, there is a winter semester coming. If you really don't know what your grades are and you're taking a prerequisite course, it will be very hard for you to even enroll in winter if we don't have these deadlines in place. So it's very important that we honor those deadlines. It's also very important that faculty turn in the grades. Those are the times they actually need to, so that we can actually configure this to be able to meet those 20 days, calendar days. Let me also say that when we had the spring semester, we had 20 days to get this to work. So we are really staying within those 20 days expectation. And one interesting fact that came up this morning, we're looking at students. You recall last week, we also sent notification to them, reminding them to withdraw if you really wanted to withdraw. And the last day to withdraw was the last day of the end of term. More students actually chose to do so this time than we had in spring semester. So students are reading their emails and they're working very much to adhere to those timelines.
Great. And there's another question about students receiving incompletes and whether that option will be available after the class completes. I think that's the intent of the question.
If they receive an incomplete, and if the credit no credit policy will apply, I will have to get back on that question, because I did indicate that we have, if they don't utilize it at the time, and they can't, but I'll have to get back on that question. because I don't want to say something that would not be clear.
I think it's probably, you can correct me if I'm wrong, it's fair to say that in changing the grading policy, we did not address incomplete. So I would probably expect that the same policies are in effect, and those would have to be arranged with the faculty member ahead of time. But maybe we need to, as you said, to have a definitive communication out so we're clear about that.
We will, and it's a good question. What we will do as we, in our FAQ and in the decision tree information is to incorporate that. VP Sarmiento is on this call. It's actually not on the call, but she's watching, and I know she will take this question down so that we answer that question in the FAQ for students. I did mention also that 86 courses are excluded. Those 86 courses that are excluded total 260 sections, or 10% of the total number of sections we're offering this fall term. So it's important information for folks to keep in mind as well.
Great, thank you. So want to go to some questions now that go back to the gift that we received this week from MacKenzie Scott. And there are two questions. One came in before we started the live briefing. And that's a question, actually really good question to raise, and helps to kind of explain part of how this gift will be used and its intent. The question is about the support of for faculty research and scholarship at Lehman, at the university, and raises the concern that the college hasn't really had a record of putting in significant amounts of money to support faculty research. And the time frame here is over decades, not just a few years. So that the question is about, will any of this funding pertain to that question? Will it be available to support faculty research? So it's a good question, because I think it goes to a point that I made in my introductory remarks about that, is that how these funds we see as in really empowering the college to leverage everything that it has to get even more resources and to build greater strength. And one of the ways that that happens, and often, you know, the university has programs, even the PSC CUNY grant program is really a program that's intended not to fully fund someone's research, but to help them to get the start that they need to get something initial going, so that they can actually go for outside funding if they need it for larger support. So in that way, that we need to look at these funds from MacKenzie Scott as funds that could be used in a lot of ways for whether they're larger initiatives of the college or an area of the college or of individual faculty members, where there is real promise for leveraging that into something much larger. As you know, in general, faculty research and scholarship is not supported by colleges. It's supported by outside sources. And I know in my whole experience, and I've had quite a lot of experience doing that, I've rarely ever gotten any support from a college to do my work, but the college gave me the space to work in as a scientist, and I went to NSF and NIH and other places and wrote grants and got support. And so that, of course, not all of the areas of scholarship and creative work are like the sciences, where there are these much larger pools of funds that are available. But there are lots of places where funds are available, and what we want to do is we want to empower the faculty to be in the best position they can be to get support from those places to support their work, which helps those faculty members, helps the students that work with those faculty members, and helps the whole college in enriching the environment, the whole intellectual environment that we have. In the end, that is an environment that really does impact students, can be very impactful for students, can help them not only progress towards their degree, but to launch them beyond their degree. So we don't know for sure how these funds will be used to support faculty individually. But in general, I think we can say that what we really want to do is we want to use them as a springboard. And as I mentioned, it's great that we can build our endowment now from $6 million to maybe $30 million. That's great, but we don't want to stop there. We want to build our endowment to $100 million or go beyond that. And at the same time, we want to have other areas of the college doing the same thing, really building off of this terrific resource and making it into something that's much greater, because $30 million in itself, as big as that sounds, won't go very far. But used in a way that is essentially an amplifier, it will go a really long ways. There was another question, which I actually thought was really great too, about the gift, and that was, will this in any way impact the funding that we're getting from the state? And I can see where that question's coming from. That's a concern, right? If the state says, oh, you just got all this money, we guess we can cut back. In fact, it will have really no impact in that area. And that's another point that I think is good to emphasize, which is that, and I mentioned it before, is that the normal operating budget of the college isn't something that really this will impact, or that will impact the way the gift is used. And so, no, I don't anticipate any impact. I mean, remember, we've got sister colleges within CUNY that have endowments, as I mentioned, $200–300 million or more, but they're dealing with the current budget situation in the same way as we are. They're not being asked to cut their budgets more because they have an endowment, because everybody understands that their endowment funds really can't help them with their operational funding for their colleges. Another question related to this gift, will there be an internal process of submitting ideas for projects? And that's a great question. And I think that's a question that's down the line. Once there is more of a roadmap for the kinds of things that would be supported, then I would anticipate that, yes, there would be processes put in place to do that, so that there's a kind of, in a way, a level playing field and opportunity to put forward ideas that fit within the way this funding is going to be laid out and defined. I saw a question about, Lehman is 80% transfer students, and there's a comment about supporting transfers and scholarships. And scholarships is certainly an area where we know some of this funding will go, an endowment for scholarships. And the transfer idea is an interesting idea too. And in fact, you probably noticed that BMCC was the other CUNY institution that also received a $30 million gift this week. And I actually had a conversation today with President Monroe of BMCC. And after we congratulated each other, we got to talking about some very interesting ideas. And you probably know BMCC has a lot of students from the Bronx. Actually, 25% of BMC students are from the Bronx, which is why we have a lot of BMCC transfer students that come to Lehman College. It makes a lot of sense. So we have lots of reasons, and we already do have, of course, BTAG, the Bronx Transfer Affinity Group that BMCC participates with, along with Hostos and BCC. So we already have some special relationships, and this really very successful BTAG program. And it's going to be building these relationships, I think, is going to continue to be important for us. And, so we talked about it, and we will see how that develops. So a question about a process and decision making about the funding use. That's again, if it's a process that will be developed. We have a normal funding allocation system within the college. I mean, all the campuses do that fit within the CUNY structure. And to some degree, that will probably be what we'll be using here. But we also have a very important strategic planning process underway, which should be defining what our priorities are for the college in the next 5 years and beyond. And that's a very important framework for how these decisions will be made. So again, we have a lot more thinking to do around how that process will work. And as I mentioned, we're going to bring in also some outside persons with a lot of experience in this area to give us their ideas, because there are folks that have a lot of experience with this, and particularly dealing with endowments and funds that are very different from the kinds of budgets that we are grappling with day in and day out. So we'll get that expertise, we will listen to them, and we will form a process that really has to line up with the mission of our college, right? I mean, in the end, we've spent really the better part of a year looking at the mission and vision of Lehman College. There's a strategic plan that's developing around that, and we really have to line up with that. That's really what ultimately has to guide us. So I'm waiting we don't have any questions. If you have other questions that you would want to have addressed, be sure and get them in the Q&A, and because we've got a few minutes yet. Maybe everyone's exhausted after this exciting week. Question about whether the funds will be used for student support services. That the answer to that really depends on what we're talking about there. If we're talking about the student support services activities that are already in our budget and in our planning, no. But if we're talking about, as I mentioned, for instance, the food bank and emergency funds that we're providing, yes, some of those funds are going to go to support that. And we'll have to see as time goes on, how that may develop and how much of that will be going to that area. But again, these funds will not be used for what we consider to be kind of already our normal operating budget, but will be for things that we're really now not able to do and would like to do that aren't within the framework of our operations. Is there, this is a question that goes back, this may be for you, Provost Nwosu, an update from AAN PVC on the boards for those students.
No, that's what I mentioned, that we have actually submitted the request, the documentation that they asked of us. And what they really, they did send a memo, by the way, this week, saying that has gone to their board, and the board has asked some additional questions, so that they will get back to us as soon as their final board reviews it and makes a decision. So that's where we are in terms of that process. But we have responded to all of the questions they have asked of us. And the documentation we sent to them, they've also acknowledged that they have those.
One of the questions that I noticed was about referring really to the number of nursing students that are impacted, and you can correct me, Provost, if I've got this wrong, but I think we have 3 cohorts of students really that are impacted. One that will graduate December. That's the group that now will certainly be able to sit for the exam and will have accredited degrees. There's a second cohort, which is kind of the middle cohort, right, of these students, who I think their number there is in around 30 plus students. And then there's the first year beginning cohort, which is about 40 some students. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah.
And the first 2 cohorts that you mentioned, the first 2 cohorts, those are the ones that we are really working very hard to see that we meet the deadline of March 1st that would allow those students to graduate from a CCNE accredited program. And so the first one for certain, the second one, there are a number of things we're looking at there, including the number of clinical hours the students have earned, and whether we can actually work to move them through that process. In my discussion with the dean yesterday, it seems that that's possible. She's also had discussions with the students. They've also had some recommendations that we're looking at, and those seem fairly reasonable. So as soon as we're clearer on those, then we can move forward with those 2. And then it's the last cohort that will then be the ones, if we get a positive nod from the second credentialing body that you mentioned, those are the ones that we will then have take that other exam from that group. So that's where we are with those 3 cohorts.
So numbers wise, that's really a lot of progress in terms of taking care of the students, and it sounds like 2/3 at least of the students have got this, probably have this opportunity. And in the first cohort, the ones that just started the program are ones that we'll then be working with for, what is the best direction for them to go.
Correct, and they have had some recommendations that they have made to the dean that we are looking at. We're also in discussion with Central regarding those recommendations. So ultimately, what we're looking at is what's going to be in the best interest of the student and what's possible we can do. And then how do we assist them to move through that process? So it's been a lot of moving parts, but it's one that I know that Dean Harrison, the chair of the department and the faculty, and everyone in your office, you've been actively involved in this. Everyone in the president's office has been actively engaged in this, and so this is all hands on the deck as we try to find best options for all of us.
Thank you. So we have time for maybe 1 or 2 more questions. One of the questions that was posted, again, I think is a really good clarifying question about the gift from MacKenzie Scott, and that is, would it be used to address the current hiring freeze? And the answer to that again is no, because the hiring freeze is impacting the positions that are in our normal operating budget. And that leads me to maybe a little bit broader answer to that question. As we've talked about our budget situation really for more than the last year, we, even before the COVID pandemic, we were looking ahead 2 to 3 years, knowing that we had a healthy fund balance within our operating budget, but also knowing that there were costs that were mandatory kinds of costs that were increasing that we couldn't control and that we would have to pay attention to. if we were going to not be facing a really severe budget situation 2, 3, 4 years down the road. Well, the severe budget situation hit us much sooner than we thought it would because of COVID. We have been very fortunate as a college, again, in contrast to many colleges around the country and in our own CUNY sister colleges, because we have that fund balance, which really results because, one, we've had very strong leadership in the area of finance. Thank you, Vice President Rotolo. And we've had very strong enrollment. Thank you, Vice President Sarmiento. And those two reasons have given us that fund balance and helped to carry us. Not that we aren't having a tough time, because I know we are. We all are having a tough time. We've all had to cut back in serious ways, and that has been painful. But we have avoided the really kind of extreme budget situations that others have not been able to avoid. And that is because of the really careful way that our finances have been managed. And so we're going to continue to do that. And that, I think, really is a great model too for handling this gift that we've gotten. And I have to think that part of the reason we were given that $30 million is because when the scrutiny was applied, and remember, almost 7,000 institutions were looked at as possible recipients for this funding, out of which 384 finally were selected. I have to think that one of the things that was noticed about Lehman College, among everything else, is that we have had very good leadership and very strong management. And in contrast, again, to lots of others that we could be compared to, we've been really solid. And I think for any funder, that gives them confidence. It makes them feel like these are people that can manage this and can do it in a way that will strengthen the institution. So that's what we're going to do. I'm very confident that that's what we will do. And while it's not going, as I said, it's not going to help us with our budget situation and the 20% reduction right now in state funding, over the long run, it is going to help us, and it is going to make us stronger. Well, I think we actually finally are at the end of our time. This is our last live briefing in 2020, the last one in the fall term, and which means that we are wrapping up our term, and we are all really ready to do that, I think. I think most of us are really looking forward to next week. I know I am, and I hope that each one of us really gets a chance to put our feet up, relax, not think about studies, not think about teaching, not think about all the work that we have to do. That will be there. It will be waiting for us when we come back. Have a good holiday, have some rest and relaxation, safely, of course, and come back in 2021 ready to really be on the move, because I really think we will be. So everyone, the best of holidays, and the best in finishing up what's left of our term.
Thank you. Same to you as well.
Happy holidays.
Happy holidays, everyone.